Why are most male feminists hypocrites? I don't think feminists on an individual level are hypocritical. But the ideology creates hypocrisy. Hypocrisy is the byproduct of trying to apply the ideology through a hole that it simply doesn't fit through. To understand why that is, we need to go over a little history first. Essentially, I believe it all comes down to patriarchal theory. It's neo-Marxism. Sheikh Derrida, a postmodernist philosopher, is the person who came up with patriarchal theory in the form of a phallogocentric patriarchy. Essentially, the theory that the world is male-dominated, and the results we see are all due to men putting themselves first at the expense of women. Seems strangely familiar. Maybe because it is. Derrida was a Marxist, you see. Equity over equality, equality and outcome, not opportunity. Though Marxist ideology lost any momentum by the 70s when, number 1, the world began to see the destruction it had caused, and, number 2, it lost its credibility when the middle class saw its standard of living massively increased under Western free enterprise democracy. It was no longer cool to be Marxist. So instead of the rich versus the poor, Derrida switched things up a little to give the movement fresh life, and the oppressed versus the oppressors was born in the mid-70s. The enemy was no longer capitalism. It was now men, the patriarchy. This was picked up and adopted instantly by the radical wings of American feminism at the time, and second plus third wave feminism has used patriarchal theory as the core of its ideology ever since. Neo-Marxist theory such as this is combative and prescribes that the world is nothing more than a Hobbesian battleground between identity groups. It seeks to divide people and remove individuality by assigning you, your views and actions as nothing more than an extension of your race, gender, ethnicity, or any factor usable to place you somewhere on the victim v. oppressor scale. It pits women directly against men by teaching the ideology that all female problems, real or perceived, are all the result of men. It will even go to the length of creating problems that don't exist to give itself more ammunition, and to prolong its ideological longevity, not to mention government funding. The ideology resolves to rectify these issues by dismantling the patriarchy. Toxic masculinity, rape culture, wage gaps, gender quotas, domestic violence industry fraud. The list goes on. Myths and misconceptions used as direct attacks on societal masculinity. It's impossible to hold to feminist ideology forever without at some point having to attack men. Because that's its ethos. The hypocrisy comes into being when women or men of good nature subscribe to this ideology as being about equality or setting both genders free, but soon discover the tenets they are asked to subscribe to are anything but equality. And when they look at the political and cultural activities of the movement and see it's at war with men, hypocrisy forms because people aren't educated about the very ideology they subscribe to and what it's really up to, and they quite simply think it's something else. The other attractive aspect of it that also helps prevent seeing its true nature is that by labeling oneself a victim, it removes personal responsibility. Not happy with life? Things not going your way? It's all the fault of men, or white people, etc. So just blame them and ask them to change themselves, or provide you equity as compensation for your position. That's the allure of Marxist ideology. And feminism is in itself a wing of postmodern neo-Marxism, by the very definition of its ideology. An example I often come across is family court rulings, and the struggle of fathers for child access or custody. Feminists will tell me they are on my side and that I need feminism because it's society's outdated models of gender roles causing the problem. True feminists believe in equal parenting, I'm told. I then link them page after page of feminist lobby groups such as NOW, the world's largest feminist organization fighting against equal parenting legislation for over 30 years, from America to Australia. They usually go silent at this point, or start abusing me. Because quite simply it shows hypocrisy. The movement isn't what people think it is superficially, it's in fact very combative. Trade unionism for women based on a Marxist framework of oppression. Its ethos is to elevate the oppressed and bring down the oppressors. So you're right, in your view of wanting to challenge gender roles, for example. Though I actually believe they are valuable things, that's another discussion. It's the ideology of feminism itself that relies on men staying in theirs want to fix a gender earnings gap, for example. Then we need to fix the gender death gap, and men need to step down from the dangerous, deadly, and pressure-filled high-paying jobs so women can do them instead. But they don't want to do those jobs. Who can blame them? And men are actually fine with that too. The ideology is hypocritical in what it says versus what it actually does or seeks, and how it goes about trying to achieve both. As such, a natural byproduct is that its defenders or supporters will often end up in a position of hypocrisy while trying to defend it. Feminism isn't alone in this though. Pretty much all left-wing civil rights movements, including race or LGBT equality, have adopted neo-Marxist stances. It's why we see white privilege or male privilege thrown around like snowballs these days, with attempts to box people by their gender, race, or sexuality as a way to silence or exclude them or their views.